everybody, and welcome to episode 610 of Good Luck High Five. This is the podcast about Magic the Gathering, no matter how much or how little you actually play day to day. We are here for you. I'm one of your hosts of the podcast, Maria.
And I'm another host, Tyler Mills.
Yes, Tyler is playing the role of Megan on this week's podcast. I am Megan's
understudy. The role of Megan is usually played by Megan, but I'm Megan's understudy, Tyler, and I, as with most understudies, am going to really try very hard and I'm going to give effort, but the execution is not going to be there.
Wow, you just roasted understudies live on the air here.
Well, I love understudies, and I think that they should be rightfully recognized and lifted up. But inevitably, they're not set up for success. They're not given nearly as much rehearsal. So it's not on them at all. It's on the system. For sure, yeah, it's on the system. Normally, the role of Megan is played by Megan. Mm-hmm. It was handy that we cast somebody who had the same name as her. But you'll be playing the part of Megan today. Tyler has been on the show once before. When you discussed how to go infinite in draft on Magic Arena back in 2020, I want to say that was. What a time. What a time it was indeed. But you're on the show now, and you've been helping out behind the scenes here on Good Luck High Five for a while now, helping us edit Commander Arcade, doing some social stuff with us. And Tyler, we're going to be talking a lot about Limited on the podcast today. Oh, wow. Because, wow, what a coincidence. Duskmourn has now been out on Arena for a week, and we are ready to dive into the data about how to draft a good deck on Arena with the help of 17 lands and Tyler's brain. Yeah. Not equal parts, those two things, I think. But yes.
Well, we'll see. We haven't recorded it yet, Tyler.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Tyler's also appeared on an episode of Commander Arcade, our Outlaws of Thunder Junction episode, which is very fun. If you want to see him pilot a Bruce Tarl deck, which I thought was very cool, Ox-themed deck.
Let's go Ox.
On the show, so you can check that out as well. Megan will hopefully be back next week. Don't worry, everybody. She's not gone forever. She just has COVID-19 again. Sorry.
Why we're laughing at that, I'm really not sure, because my God, what a thing and what a nightmare.
So Tyler has graciously agreed to step in this week and have play the role of Megan on this episode of Good Luck High Five. We're also going to be talking on the episode this week about Commander, because some huge stuff has been happening in the Commander space. I don't know if you've all noticed. Have you been on the internet in the past couple of weeks? But we've had some enormous bans in the format. And then just today, breaking news on the day we're recording this podcast, actually, Wizards of the Coast announced that they are going to take over the management of the Commander format. And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit on the show as well, to get you up to speed and to let you know what we think about it. We're both kind of Commander light players. I would say Tyler's played exactly one game. Thank you. About to play two, though, coming up this week. True enough.
Yeah, double. I mean, that's double the experience. So the bar, the line graph is rocketing upwards.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Exponential growth. Yeah. And I, of course, just play from time to time on our show. But, we have a podcast, and so we have opinions, and we are paid to have them. So we're going to have them in that segment later on this episode. But before we kick things off, huge thank you to everybody who supports us here at Good Luck High Five Studios and helps us make everything that we make. And those are our patrons over on patreon.com/GLHF Magic. You can head over there, become a patron. We have a bunch of different tier levels for you to donate at. You get access to our Discord. If you donate enough, you get access to longer episodes for producers, which are always super fun. We talked about the Emmys last week and really got into it with some of the... I realized I was a dramas person. Like, I'm a comedian in real life, but on TV, I prefer to watch dramas. Yeah. I learned that about myself live on the air last week. And so that was very fun. So if you're a producer, you get access to that. If you're an influencer, you help influence our Commander Arcade episodes, get entered into drawings to win the tokens that we make on that show, etc. We don't have any new patrons to thank this week, so unfortunately, I can't force Tyler to do a pun, which is what I was going to do.
Man, huge loss there for everyone involved. Yeah,
for sure. So that's too bad. But let's welcome Megan back next week after her COVID-19 adventure and make her make some puns with a hopefully like a slightly addled brain. You know what I mean? I don't want any great puns.
Yeah, great. Just for the puns. I mean, I kind of hope her brain is like firing on all cylinders.
Well, you can hope that, but I'm hoping that it's slightly addled.
Well, fair enough. I guess I can. Yeah, I won't try to control your hopes.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm glad that you have the good hopes because that allows me to have this garbage take.
Great. Happy to be your, I'll be the shield for your garbage
Thank you.
hopes.
Thank you. So help us get a fun for Megan next week. Patreon.com/GLHF Magic. Also, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Card Kingdom. You can check them out at cardkingdom.com/GLHF. Duskmourn, a House of Horror is available now for whatever you want. If you want to get a box to draft with your friends, do a team draft if you can find 6 people. Tyler, you're a big fan of some team drafts.
Absolutely. I've not had the opportunity to do it often, but I do
but
believe
every time,
it is truly a beautiful thing.
One of the delights of life
when you can get it together. Yeah.
You can get a box and do that with your friends. You can buy some singles. You can sell some of your draft chaff if you've been drafting at your LGS and you open up some stuff that you don't want for any of your collections. You can sell it back to Card Kingdom and get a bonus on whatever else you actually want there if you're going to go ahead and buy some singles. Your order comes to you in one package, so you don't have to wait for 6 different packages to arrive on your doorstep. Check them out. cardkingdom.com/GLHF. Thank you as well to Dragon Shield, the sleeve sponsor of Good Luck High Five. You can check them out by checking out the link in the show notes or underneath this video. Use code GLHF at checkout for 5% off. Tyler, you've got some of the new sleeves they mailed to us here.
Yes, I do.
Right
I'm especially drawn to this 25-year one just because the texture of it is so satisfying. I think, what can I say other than my eye was immediately caught by it when I sat down at this table. And,
these are the special 25th anniversary sleeves. We talked about them a little bit on the show last week. I saw them in real life at the pre-release, and they look awesome. If you're going to Vegas, I bet they're going to be selling them there as well. They're so beautiful. Check out whatever color you want. They've got them on their website. Please use our affiliate links for anything that you want to buy. Keeps your cards safe for years and years. I've used the same set of Dragon Shield sleeves that I don't know how many pre-releases in a row, and it's been totally fine.
Yeah.
So head to our show notes to check out that link. Use code GLHF at checkout, like I mentioned, for 5% off. All right, Tyler, you ready to dive into it?
Let's do it.
High five. Wow, that's our first high five on the show in a long time, and our name is Good Luck High Five.
Hey, pretty good. And we used our upstage hands, so I want to congratulate us for that as well. It's good for the camera. I mean, if you're listening on the podcast, it's going to be meaningless, but for the YouTube video, that's a great stage picture.
That's called theater. Let's talk about Commander, kids. Unless you're living under a rock or you don't care about Commander, perhaps. I feel like you would still know about this, though, even if you don't play. What happened on the 23rd of September? Remember the 23rd of September, as Earth, Wind, and Fire didn't sing, but they would if they were Commander players. Some bans shook the world. The Commander Rules Committee banned Dockside Extortionist, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and Nadu Winged Wisdom. Huge bans for the format, especially these mana accelerants, chase rares that a lot of people really had beautiful versions of in their deck. That like Rainbow Mana Crypt from Ixalan was a card I personally had my eye on. Never pulled the trigger though, thank God. But was beautiful. That people, now have to take out of their decks if they want them to be still legal in Commander. Nadu, I think a ban that most people kind of saw coming.
Yes.
It's not legal in
a very limited number of formats.
What can you still play Nadu in? I just really need to know. You can play it in Legacy, Vintage, Oathbreaker, Historic Brawl, and Timeless. Okay. So it's
pretty limited.
It's getting cut down there on where you can actually play that.
Especially given, I think, the amount of time that it has been even a card in existence versus the number of formats that can be played in.
That's a good point.
Speaks volumes too.
Yeah, I wonder what the shortest lived and most banned card is in the history of Magic.
Great question. I mean, I certainly think of Oko,
Oko's got to be up there.
But it's a great question.
Don't be printed with their cost being 1 green blue if you're a card.
That's a great point, actually.
Just say, you know what? Don't even print me.
Yeah. If you are a sentient card and you're thinking, I guess even before your birth,
before you're born.
Yeah, it's like when you're just like sort of diffuse like cosmic dust,
a glimmer in the eye of somebody
designer
on the design team.
Yeah.
Get a 2 in there in that gray little circle instead of a 1.
Or I guess just be blue-green. Like that could work too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Though better to increase the mana cost. I think safer
for erring
that way,
on the
sure.
side of that. Yeah. So these bans prompted a lot of people to have a lot of capital O opinions on the internet, including a lot of people who play Commander. This is a huge deal. Like I mentioned, a lot of people playing these cards in their decks for a long time. They're highly sought after, desirable cards that a lot of people have loved. Some people have actually invested in. Game stores, have stocked them and took a financial hit on the banning of these cards. A store near me actually put out a video where they put them in a blender and made a shake out of these cards.
I mean, they could get unbanned,
Yeah, I know. And then that's a very expensive shake. Somebody just took a sip of.
Really, truly.
And if you don't know, Commander is managed, or was managed, I should say, by the Rules Committee, which was a committee of 5 people who took it upon themselves to kind of manage the format, issue bans when they thought there needed to be bans, etc., and consult with a larger group, the CAG, which...
CAG and RAG.
The CAG and the RC. They would help advise the RC on decisions that ended up being made. And they made this decision. Now, the blowback of this decision was enormous. A lot of people were very, very upset that these cards got banned because they lost a lot of value instantaneously with the banning of these cards. A lot of people were upset because they liked playing with them. Perhaps they were in their decks and made their decks even viable. A lot of people said, older commanders struggled to keep up power level wise with modern commanders, and these cards helped them accelerate their mana and get these commanders out and make them playable where they wouldn't be able to hang if these cards didn't exist, for example. Some people just want to play more powerful decks of Commander as well, such as people who play CEDH, for example, who play these cards more readily. Now, I've never played with these cards in my deck as far as I'm aware. I'm like trying to remember if Rob built me a Commander arcade deck that had this in. I don't know. I don't have any, I don't have a stock of them under my mattress for a rainy day or anything like that. I feel like after listening to what people have said about it and hearing a bunch of takes, that it seemed that most people were in favor of this ban being a good thing for the health of the format. I'll say it that way. It seemed like that was pretty mostly universal. Like, this is what we want. Most people who play Commander are extreme casuals. They don't keep up with hardly anything. They just play whatever. They're playing kitchen table Magic, which, as we know, is the most popular way to play Magic. And just generally health of the format, probably better if these cards had never existed. So there's that. However, a lot of people said this came out of nowhere. We were not expecting it at all. The Rules Committee had not issued any bans in the past 3 years. And to all of a sudden have this enormous hammer slammed down on the game was traumatizing, for lack of a better word.
Truly.
To have it happen all at once. Which is pretty scary for a lot of people. And then, of course, the hardship of losing money on something that you had used for a long time, perhaps you loved, perhaps you invested in, all of a sudden, because 5 people, or 4 people as the case may be, it was not a unanimous vote, decided can be pretty heart-wrenching, especially for local game stores, which lost value on their collection that they had hoped to sell one day, of course. And so all that being said, boy, oh boy, did we get some people who had some very reasonable takes about it and some people who had some very unreasonable takes about it. There were threats of violence that were very serious, that were leveled against members of the Rules Committee and probably the Advisory Committee as well, who did not have any say in this, by the way. They didn't even know what was happening. They got a clue that was like, hey, we might be doing something big, get ready. And they're like, what? And then this happened. And it was really, really bad, and just completely unacceptable. And I hope everybody who's listening to this show, you're all good people, so I don't believe you were any of the people who participated in that. It just breaks my heart that that's where we ended up as a community. A community
interacting with a committee.
Yes. And, on some level, I'm sadly not surprised. but I am disappointed. Do I sound like an angry mom?
No, I wouldn't have said that, but I mean, now that you brought it into the room, I mean, there's like it's a dash of that, yeah.
When Megan and I talked about women in Magic the Gathering many, many moons ago on our podcast, we got a huge amount of backlash as well. So I was familiar with like the fact that it could happen, and it just, I was hopeful we had made strides as a community, and it's not to say I don't think we have, because I do think we have, but it really showed the dark underbelly of the mob that can happen. And I don't know. I've heard some people say that they were ashamed to be a Magic player because of that.
Yeah.
And I understand that sentiment. Like, I want people to look at Magic and be like, that's a cool thing with good people who do it. I don't want them to look at us and be like, wow, a bunch of like angry people who just yell about their game and like issue death threats to people who care about it so deeply. It's like, that's not what I want to be. That's not what I want to be a part of. Yeah. So I really hope we can all collectively learn something from this experience, which has traumatized members of the RC and has affected a huge change, which was announced today, in that Wizards of the Coast is now taking over management of Commander going forward. The monkey's paw curls. Like, what did you think would happen?
Yeah.
Oh boy. It's just really rough. So Wizards, in an announcement on their website, can you read the part, Tyler, for the folks at home? That is the bulk of the announcement here, the important part.
Yeah, so I'd say the bolded part of the announcement is that as of today, in partnership with members of the existing Rules Committee, Wizards is announcing that the Rules Committee is giving management of the Commander format to the game design team of Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. So now, like every other format, basically, Wizards is going to manage Commander as well. Because of the death threats and the fear of swatting, the doxing, etc., that occurred, I feel like this is an inevitable result of what happened. Are you happy now? It also makes me really sad because Commander was a really unique thing that we had as a community managed outside of Wizards.
Yeah.
Wizards, because of the nature of what it is, which is a company, which their goal is
to make money.
That's right. Means that it will be managed differently. That's just facts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the same side of things, I think that it would have happened eventually anyway, because the format has gotten so big that asking 5 people who are not paid and did it as a volunteer basis, who all have other full-time jobs, was pretty untenable.
Yeah.
But this being the thing that pushed it over the cliff is really, really sad, as I mentioned. And I feel sad for what's going to happen now because of it. Hopefully Wizards will be good stewards of this format. I know they are extra incentivized to do so because of all the love that the community had for the way that it was managed for so long. But, they are a company, like I said. So I guess we just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah,
because of that.
They mentioned in the announcement they were going to try to keep their interaction with it community focused in some regard, but as you said, that is inevitably going to change in some way, shape, or form from going from a actually community based rules committee to something that is being run by this company, and who the company certainly contains many people that love this game, but also contains at its core that deeply capitalist mindset that we just need to make money, and they have no choice in that matter. That is the reality of the situation that they're in. And so, it's going to be interesting to see.
They've talked about the fact in this announcement that they are going to be thinking about a different way to organize Commander decks based on a bracketing system, a 4-tier bracket system, which is their in turn based on which cards are in your deck. And they say it's like beta level thing right now. They want community feedback about it. They've started a Discord server, which you can check out if you head to dailymtg.com and look at the article. They're also going to be hosting a stream about it, which you'll be able to watch on Twitch VODs, which is happening on October 1st. So it will have passed by the time you hear this episode, but you can go watch the VOD of it. I don't know how useful that is going to end up being. It seems like not too different in my opinion, but whatever, we'll see. They're also going to be evaluating the current banned list alongside both the Commander Rules Committee and the community. So what that says to me is that they are going to consider bans and also potentially unbans.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So perhaps,
perhaps they're going to take back
some blender based decisions that have been made. Could come back to haunt some people.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where we stand now, everyone. The dust settles, and if a mob gets mad about something, even if it's just like the bottom 10% of the community, like these things have real consequences that end up affecting things potentially for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And this is what has happened. For my part, I think we are a better place without these mana accelerants in Commander. I would also advocate for a Soul Ring ban personally. I would put
hot take.
That one into there.
That truly, though not financially based, I do feel like that would bring. I think if they had done that, there might not be a Commander format at all anymore. I think
that would have been the straw
down. Yeah, I think. Whatever it means to burn a format down, I feel like that might have happened.
Some people are saying now does Commander end up being split into casual play and CADH?
Yeah, which I do think would make a lot of sense.
It would make sense to me too.
Yeah.
On some level, I don't understand why there's anything banned in Commander, because you can have a rule of zero discussion, as they say, pre-game discussion, and talk about what's okay and what not okay in your pod. Maybe it's good that there is an overarching hey, nobody can play goals, okay? But on some level, I think the spirit of Commander is such that, do what you will.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder if there is a different way. It does feel like the format, just the sensibility of it is so different than most of the other formats in Magic that I wonder if the word ban itself could be, shifted in some way to certainly it makes sense, I think, to give groups of people who may not have sat down and thought a lot about what cards to play, a list of cards. Yeah, some guideposts. Yeah, that they use. That feels super useful. But strictly speaking, saying this is a card that's not okay to play. I wonder if there's some different way of communicating that might be more useful in those discussions pre-game.
So should we say we're putting it in the brig?
Yes, that's perfect.
We're sedating it indefinitely. And it's just the cards lying on a little bed with an IV drip going into it.
And they have to make that graphic for each of their cards that happens to. Yeah. No, there's something there. Yeah. It maybe needs a little more workshopping, but something there maybe.
I will say this, for people who think of Magic as a financial investment, please don't.
Yes, that is, unless, yeah.
I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your life, but this can happen to you.
Yes.
It can happen. Nobody's immune.
Yes.
So that's my opinion.
I think that's a good opinion.
Do that. Okay. So that's our discussion, everybody. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And the player is us in this case. And also don't hate the game because we talk about it and it's our livelihood. What am I saying? Let us know how you feel. I am interested in your, non-vitriolic take in our Patreon Discord server or in the YouTube comments. So let us know. And this discussion will be ongoing, I'm sure, into the future here on Good Luck High Five. But let us know what you think. And we'll keep soldiering on. Shifting gears, clunk, 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 clunk. In this old jalopy of a podcast held together by glue and Patreon.
I love jalopies as a metaphor. I think it's a can't miss. Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Limited now and Duskmourn Limited. Tyler, you've mentioned that you have a love for Limited. That's what brought you back into the game in 2019. I mentioned you were on this podcast several years ago talking about how to go infinite on Arena, which you have in fact done. When was the last time you paid any money on Arena?
Whatever the first day that I downloaded the thing was. I bought whatever those starter deals. I think I spent about $20. I'd have to go back and look, but it was I spent about $20 on whatever the starter deals they give you are.
And how much gold do you have right now, Tyler?
It's something like 1,150,000 little gold doubloons. Little imaginary gold. I'm an Arena millionaire. That is true.
Okay. And I'm saying this to give you some cred here in what we're about to talk about as far as Limited's concerned, because that's pretty incredible, honestly.
Thank you.
So good job.
Thanks.
And what Tyler has to say, everybody, we should listen to it. So what we like to do is dive into the data. But before we do that, I just want your overall take on how you've been enjoying Duskmourn so far.
I really have been enjoying it. I feel like it is one of the most balanced formats that's been released recently. And it also feels like the design of it is just really thoughtful and feels really good to draft. Like it feels, I think Bloomburrow, which had things that were very fun about it, felt a little bit more like you were on rails, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when you went to pick your cards and you started down a path, you were sort of like, okay, this is just what I am going to do, and I can't really, I can't really deviate from this at this point. And I think that the way that they've designed Duskmourn is much, much more flexible than that in the draft portion of it, which is my favorite portion. And I think you can. Certainly, there's lots of powerful cards, but those cards don't feel, for the most part, like they are unanswerable. And also, once you start down a path, there are ways in which you can say, like, oh, maybe I thought that I was going to be drafting a deck that was based off of Eerie, like the enchantment based. Oh God!
Strategy, is that the word?
No, well, no, no, it's not. Mechanic. That is the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
And then partway through the draft, you're like, oh, maybe white isn't all that open. If that's the case, like there are other. Delirium specifically, I think, is like in this beautiful kind of like middle ground in the if you think of the three main kind of mechanics being Eerie, Delirium, and Manifest Dread. I think. Delirium really sits in the middle of those things because like if you have all of these, like you've maybe started to draft like enchantment creatures for your enchantment based Eerie deck. And then you're like, oh, maybe this specific deck isn't open. But guess what? Enchantment based creatures, if they end up in your graveyard, can activate Delirium. It's exactly. It's a 2 count towards your Delirium.
There.
Exactly. Which is pretty far, in the grand scheme.
Yeah, 50%.
Yeah, really. And similarly, if you maybe started out like thinking I'm going to draft a Manifest Dread deck, if you have some Manifest Dread cards, those cards are truly excellent for getting, specific types of cards into your graveyard. And again, you can end up in a place where you're maybe okay playing a Delirium deck. And I think similarly, the Delirium cards writ large have felt pretty... what's the word, flexible or more flexible than I think Delirium has been maybe in the past. And I think you don't necessarily have to be in like a hyper streamlined Delirium deck to play some of the better Delirium cards in the set. And I think those cards can be just fine to be put into your decks because of the things that we've just mentioned. And I'll also call out Manifest Dread specifically because I think that they took something that on initial read, it sort of feels like a small update, I think, to the Manifest mechanic, which has been around for a while.
Huge update,
but it really is
a
huge update. This idea of like having card selection and of putting one of those cards into your graveyard and all of the different ways that interacts with the other mechanics in the set, and just that pick between, instead of it just being one, you're getting to pick between 2 cards. It is a truly like night and day type of a difference in terms of how the mechanic feels. And so even the card, the 1 green card, Manifest Dread, which is literally just,
manifesting
it
dread.
feels like it could be a 2-mana 2/2 on some level, but it does so much more because of that card selection and because of the way that interacts with so many of the other mechanics in the set. So I've really been enjoying it because it feels, for all those different reasons, it just feels like all of your decisions in the draft are meaningful. And it feels like you get to say, you get to feel really clever because you get to see the way these different cards attach to each other in ways that are not immediately obvious, I think, as you just sit down to read the cards.
Totally.
And it feels really good in that way.
Yes, Bloomburrow being a typo set, this has been a critique of those kinds of sets for years, puts you in a lane. If you're not in the lane, your deck's not as good. This with overlapping mechanics like you're talking about, especially something like Manifest Dread or Delirium, is something that's often been highlighted as a hallmark of a set that ends up being good or great. And so I have high hopes for Duskmourn. I have played more Duskmourn than any draft this year.
Nice.
I have been loving it. I think because of that, the games that I play where somebody's not mana screwed or flooded, okay, let's take that out here.
Yeah, well, of course.
Feel extremely close.
Yes.
And also dependent upon the decisions that you make, which are above and beyond, do I attack or do I block, right? I feel like I have lost games by a hair or won them by a hair's breadth so many times in this format, more than I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And that there's nothing more satisfying than that feeling of you really feel like your decisions, for better or for worse, influence the outcome of that game. And
what do you mean for worse, Tyler?
Well, I don't mean anything. I'm saying everyone has that experience of saying like, oh man, if I'd only just like you look back. But for me, even if you've lost the game, if you can recognize those moments, like I think there's something so satisfying about that.
Absolutely.
In terms of this game. And one of obviously the true beauties of Magic as a game is that those situations seem so they vary so much from game to game. And even though there might be sort of like categories of buckets you can put them in, like the specificity of some of the situations you get yourself in just it feels like it's, you know, a 1 in a million thing, and you get to have that experience kind of over and over again. And that's one of the beauties of the game for sure.
So we're going to be talking about 17 Lands data today, which if you're not familiar is a wonderful website. Well, wonderful in some ways. In some ways I wish it didn't exist because I like an unsolved format better, but whatever. It's very helpful in trying to figure out how to get better at a draft format. And the first thing that we're going to call out is we're mostly focusing on best of one data because there is way more best of one data, way more games played on Arena that is being fed into 17 Lands. But Tyler, are you a primarily best of 3 player?
I do. Yes.
Traditional draft,
yes,
as it's
traditional
called?
draft as it's called. Yeah, I certainly enjoy best of 3 much more. It depends obviously on sometimes as is obviously the case in terms of the appeal of best of 1. Sometimes I don't have time to play a best of 3 match, but if I do have the time, I heavily prefer it. It feels like Magic as it was intended to be played, and it feels like that stretch over the course of 3 games of decision making, of like recognizing, oh, this is what my opponent's deck is trying to do and trying to shift, whether in bringing cards in and out or just in your mindset in the gameplay, trying to shift to meet that. If they have specific bombs, like getting to see them once and not have it just like you might lose that game, but then getting to say, oh,
I sideboard
exactly, or just like, oh, I know whether it's maybe it's a board clear or if it's just this bomb creature,
right?
Like
exactly.
You're maybe not playing into the board so much, or you might save a piece of removal that you might have used in a different way, like that. Like it feels like all of those things, in addition to the obvious changes in Arena, like the hand smoother that have like a very outsized impact on
you realize that pretty quick when you play in real life. You're like, what is my hand?
Hey, wait a second,
smooth?
my hand doesn't always have 2 lands in it. Like, what's
Someone
this?
Come here and smooth this for me.
Exactly. Which again, it's a trade-off, and it makes sense given the product that they're trying to put out and like what best of 1 is. But the hand smoother just has a really massive impact on what the games feel like. And when everyone is always curving out, it inevitably makes an aggressive strategy a little bit more powerful. And there's interesting things that can be done to play around with that. But I think at the end of the day, best of 3 is just a more pure Magic experience for me.
Yes. Yeah. Megan would agree with you too. That's
very good. Well, oh man, as an understudy, I feel like
you're doing really good.
I've at least inhabited 1/1000th of the role in a passable way.
I think you're making me want to go home and play best of 3. You know what I mean?
All right.
We're also going to give this caveat too when we talk about cards and their rankings, so like best 10 commons or whatever. We want to keep in mind that a color might be a lower power level than other colors in a set, and as such may drag down the ranking of a particular individual card. Yes,
and I think it's worth saying that any kind of like the use of the data, especially in a set like Duskmourn, which does feel like it has like there's a wide variety of things that are viable. You're always going to want to take it with a grain of salt in terms of your decisions on any individual draft, because ultimately, you're always going to want to try to draft a deck and not just a pile of really good cards.
What are you talking about, Tyler? I love my piles. They're precious to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, whatever I should say.
No, they're not. I hate them.
The caveat I should say is that whatever way you want to have fun with the game, you should do that. But in terms of, from my perspective, it always feels more fun to draft a deck rather than a pile of really good cards. So inevitably, as the draft progresses, there's going to be times when whatever these ratings aren't going to apply to what it is that you're trying to do.
Exactly.
But as you're starting down the path of a draft like that, especially the first couple picks, certainly having like what these, like wide number of games played by a wide number of players who are by and large, if you have put your 17, if you've hooked up, you've done the trouble of
connected your account to 17 lands.
You're probably a better than average player. So like you're also getting sort of that like better than average outlook on the draft format. So those things are both true.
All right. So you mentioned earlier that this format feels relatively even as far as color power is concerned. And the data does actually back that up as well. Pretty well across the board as far as win rates are concerned, which are hovering like around 55% for every single color, with the exception of black, which is at about 53%, which that's great news.
Yeah, it's really great news. Yeah, truly. Like I think it always feels similarly to, the idea of like the large mechanics in the set interacting well together. When you sit down and you know that no matter what you open, you can take that card and not feel like you're putting yourself in like a really disadvantaged lane.
Yeah.
Because the color is for whatever reason just really not at the same power level as the other colors in the set. Like that is always a good feeling in a format.
That makes me very excited, everybody, to see those stats. Then we have to ask ourselves, are we just playing two colors in this format? Because splashing in Duskmourn, I found, is relatively simple. Mm-hmm. We have some good dual lands. We have the Spine Seeker,
which is a great card.
Grossest card from Duskmourn. Congratulations. Great card. I love that card. Yep. You can go get us whatever we need our fixing. We've got Terramorphic Expanse to help us find our lands. We've got the Moldering Gym, or whatever it's called, the Moldy Gym.
I think that's right, yeah.
The Slimy Gym.
Sure. Yeah.
The Foot Fungus Gym can go get us some lands.
There we go. That's
See, this is why they should let me name cards. Call me wizards. That's in the set and is great. So yeah, I feel like splashing is easy in this set. However, the data says two color is the place to be, though splashing is not off the table entirely. And I have done it in some of my trophy decks and felt pretty good about it because of how easy it is. But if you can be, you should of course try to be two colors. And with that in mind, we're going to talk about the win rates of the two color pairs, starting at the top and working our way down to the sewer. And we've got some really interesting and good news here. Speaking of the top, is Azorius at the date of this recording, the win rate being 58.4%. Very strong color pair, supported by some really, really excellent commons, which we'll get to in a little bit. What do you think of this color pair, Tyler?
This is the most purely eerie. It's the eerie color pair that works well, I would say. And it's really they're not only the commons but the signpost uncommons. I'm gonna remember
Gremlin
the Gremlin 2. Is it Gremlin Tamer? Yeah, Gremlin Tamer. That card is very, very, very good. And the little, it's a cat, right? The other one that's like reduces the cost of enchantments and unlocking rooms.
Yes, the 2/3.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Both of those cards are good. The Gremlin Tamer specifically is very, very good. And it just feels like there's so many ways to get little enchantments onto the battlefield.
Yeah, you can trigger that eerie Tamer like 3 times in one turn.
Truly, and when you do that, you're like, oh yeah, I guess I feel like I've just won this game. Yeah. So yeah, that
so true.
It feels like that and Boros feel like the most streamlined decks where they're just like they have like a very streamlined goal and they have lots of support to get there. And so yeah, I certainly it's a card combination, a color combination that I like to be in.
And that makes sense that you mentioned Boros, because Boros is coming in number 2 just by a hair. Who knows? These decks might shift up and down. They might trade places with each other as we continue on with the format. And a matures Boros currently sitting at 58.3%. Red-white, Arabella, whatever the heck that stupid doll's name is. Yeah. Incredible.
Yes.
Just dome. I think I got dome for like 13.
Yeah. It's It's like that. It's like that black squirrel. It was like 1 and a black, and I can't remember what the stats were, but from Bloomborough that cared about types. But it feels like, especially in draft, it's maybe even easier to turn on, and it's an uncommon, and
you can get it back from the graveyard pretty easily.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah. And truthfully, I believe that that's not even. I think is it Nefarious Mayhem or whatever the other signpost uncommon is actually better than Arabella
the Gremlins maker.
The three Gremlins, and they get Menace and Lifelink and Haste.
Well, she loves that card, so it's fine.
They all work well together, but that card is actually even better. And so I think those two are actually the best. They're in the top 5 of the all uncommons in the set, and they're the best gold. Both of those are the best gold uncommons by the stats at this point. So,
wow. Yeah. So Boros and Azorius, colors you want to be in, and both sharing white. Coming in at number 3, drumroll please, it is Gruul, red-green at 57.4%. Love this deck. Yeah.
I always I've not actually gotten to draft a Gruul deck yet, but they're probably my favorite color pairs. I can't explain exactly why that is, but just I love just those, well-statted creatures turning sideways. There's something about it that just does it for me, so.
Coming in number 4 is Simic, green-blue, and this, who thought I would be saying those words on this podcast? Not me, because Simic has been at the bottom of the barrel for God knows how many sets in a row now.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, certainly. There's times when it's been all right, but I think by and large it's often one of the worst color pairs. I will call out the signpost uncommon on this one as well. The Bookworm, that card is just even if you don't have something that you've played turned upside down on a turn, it just loots every turn for free. It just feels like and considering that most green decks are caring about what gets and blue decks are caring about what ends up in the graveyard. Even just the looting for free every turn is a real thing that your opponent has to deal with, and when you get to actually just draw the card, it feels unfair.
Yes, it does. And we like unfair things in Magic.
I guess, when they're happening for you, I guess,
So true. We have a tie here currently today for the next position, which is 5th, between Rakdos black-red and Golgari in black-green. So those are both currently sitting at 55.4%. I haven't had an opportunity to draft Rakdos yet. I think I was a bit scared of it because it's a highly synergistic format when you have a sacrifice deck that needs to super come together, or else what are you doing? You're killing your own creatures for no reason.
Yeah.
So I haven't gone down that road yet, but appears to be a totally fine place to be, along with Golgari, messing about in that graveyard.
Always.
Getting some deliriums. I like to splash it with blue for Sultai.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because blue has some really excellent removal and tempo spells in this format.
Very true.
All right, so that's 5 and 6. We'll split it there. Coming in, and after that, we have Izzet blue-red, sitting at 52.9%. And this is kind of a surprise to me. I was re-listening to our last episode earlier, doing some QC work, and I was like, I'm worried about Izzet. I'm concerned it's going to be overpowered because rooms are so much card for card that I'm worried that it's just going to just blow everything out of the water. What's going on here, Tyler?
It's a good question. I can't say that I know. My guess would be that Izzet is just a little bit more. I think both Izzet and Dimir, which spoiler alert is the next one down.
Coming up next.
Next one down the list. I think both of those decks feel like they're maybe just a little more difficult to build, I think. And I have not had the opportunity to draft. I've drafted Izzet, but I have not drafted Dimir. And I feel like we will see those win rates come up, at least some, over the course of the format.
Sure.
I think that's one thing that 17 lands, if you're worried about it solving the format, there's lots of times over the past year where there have been decks that felt like they were near the bottom. A great example is Otters from
that is a great point.
Bloomburrow.
That's a great point.
Lots of sort of the very best drafters had lots of success drafting Otters later in the format. It's one of the many, many beautiful things about draft is that it's self-correcting and they're no matter what assuming that the set has been designed in a way that's defensible, there's always going to be an opportunity if you've got. If the thing is just completely open and you're going to be able to build a deck that's choosing, you get to see so many more of the good cards for that color pair. You're going to be able to build a good deck. And I just think I don't know specifically why. I agree with you. Rooms feel like they are generally a good thing to be doing in this format. And maybe it's just that other colors actually have better tools to kind of support that like pure value than what Izzet does at this moment.
Yeah.
But I feel like people are going to find a way to build these decks, life finds a way. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that'd be my take on him.
Dimir, like you mentioned, sitting at 52.3%. And then we've got Orzhov after that at 52.4%. Oh, excuse me. So Orzhov is
in
above.
the opposite order of that.
Yeah,
so,
Orzhov's above Dimir.
Scratch. Though again, a 0.1% is not super statistically significant, I don't think. Certainly sad. It felt like in the early takes of the format that people thought that maybe this reanimation deck might have some legs, which I think reanimation in draft just almost never works. Like it's just like they always, they're not always doing that, but periodically they try to make reanimation work in draft, and it just feels like it almost never does. I think the only card, and it wasn't like it was super I feel like Ikoria is the only time I remember there being that back for more card was so good that I think it kind of single-handedly made it like somewhat viable, though usually you were just kind of splashing around to get into that sort of a thing, and it maybe wasn't like super focused on reanimating stuff. It was just that was a really good card. But it felt like they tried to, turn the knobs of some of these
I wish they would have turned them a little harder, because I think reanimation's pretty cool.
Yeah, it would be fun to have. I mean, maybe we would hate it if it actually worked, but it feels like...
It did happen to me one time, I did hate it.
Yeah. I guess I meant like maybe in a format where reanimation was good, maybe we wouldn't like it, but it feels like I would like to at least see what that's like, you know what I mean?
Until it happens to you.
Yeah.
We missed Celestia here. Celestia is at 53.8%. So the bottom half of our list as well. Green-white just doesn't seem to be having the effect that people hoped it would have as far as Survivor is concerned. It seems really hard to turn on Survivor sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cards that you're just going to play at 2, which are going to block a lot of the cards that need to be tapped, and only have 2 toughness. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons we see it not being quite as successful.
Yeah, I think there's some Survivor cards that are good, but it feels like they're kind of just good in like they don't necessarily need to be in green white to be good. And I think there's signposts on commons. I hate to specifically call out the baseball bat that was featured on Good Luck High Five.
Our preview card, how dare you?
I think that's like at around like a 50% win rate or something, which is very low for 17 lands, which like the kind of like baseline is somewhere around 56% of just like all, so if it's lower than that, it usually means you probably don't want to put it in your deck, and 50% is pretty low, especially for a card that was meant to draw people into the color pair. So, so I think
roasted, you stupid bat.
Womp womp.
Okay, so that's a look at how the 2 color pairs are doing, but across the board, you can make any of these work. That's our caveat. Of course, you need to draft your seat correctly, look for what's open. And the overall flatness of how good the colors are on their own does support that as well here with Duskmourn, more so than any set recently. So that is very, very good news overall.
Agreed.
So the other thing we have to talk about very briefly is the speed of the format. Duskmourn is slower than a lot of formats have been recently. In fact, it is the slowest format this year of the main sets that Wizards has put out onto Arena. Modern Horizons 3 being the fastest of them, followed by Murders at Carlove Manor, then Bloomburrow, then Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and Duskmourn coming in at number 5, which, hey, finally.
Yeah, I mean, it's I love to attack, but a second high five of the show, but the very, very fast decks, especially if you're playing mostly best of 1 on Arena, can sometimes just make it feel like there isn't real games of Magic being played. It can sometimes feel like just that those curve outs are happening, and going first becomes like extremely important. It's always somewhat important, no matter what the speed of the format is. It's rare, though we've seen even recently at the Pro Tour level, like people choosing to go second in draft. So it's not to say that it can never happen, but it's especially in best of 1, it's sort of certainly the exception rather than the rule. And so it feels good to see something, this format feel a little slower. Feels like a really good thing.
And I think this is the correct direction, Wizards. I feel like we're pumping the brakes a little bit. From 2 aggressive players saying that, hopefully you can take that to heart.
Truly.
Now we're going to talk about the top 10 best commons in the set. Now these are the cards you're going to come across the most often as you're drafting, so it's important to know how good they are. And these are based on game in hand win rate. So the percentage of the time you win the game when you draw this card into your hand at any point over the game. So we'll go start at number 1. Best common in this set, none other than Trapped in the Screen. 2 and a white, Ward 2. When it enters the battlefield, exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield.
Yeah.
What more do you want?
I mean, truly, especially with that ward too, like that makes such a huge difference that, it just is that much harder to remove the thing, which is there is a fair amount of enchantment removal running around in the set, and it is a set when enchantment removal can be main decked, I think, because
for sure.
how many rooms, how many enchantment creatures there are, all artifact creatures as well. So, it just that extra ward too. They've really, it used to be, like thinking of the days when pacifism was a card that was regularly trotted out in limited formats, like this obviously is turned up to 11 from that, it is not only the so many parts about what pacifism represented as a removal spell became just kind of untenable, I think, in modern limited sets. And so this is they've made a version of enchantment removal that is very, very good.
Glimmer Burst is coming in at number 2. I love this card. 3 and a blue, instant, draw 2 cards, create a 1/1 Glimmer creature token. Sign me up.
Yeah. Just instant speed way to trigger Eerie, and you get 2 cards. It's what else can you say?
Speaking of glimmers, Glimmer Light is the 3rd best common, and I think this will come as a shock to a lot of people, Tyler.
Yeah, I think both this Glimmer Burst and Glimmer Light are fairly underrated in terms of when they're being taken right now. And I think Glimmer Light especially because it can go in so many, I'm not saying you want to play this in every deck, but because it's colorless, you obviously can.
This is the flashlight, everybody, in case you don't know at home. 2 mana.
Yes.
When it enters, you make a Glimmer, so same as Glimmer Burst.
A 1/1 enchantment.
Yep, and equip creature gets +1/+1 with an equip cost of 1.
Yeah, and it does so many things. It's an artifact for Delirium. If you want to manifest it into the graveyard or whatever other way you might have to get it in the graveyard, that equip cost of 1 just makes it so it's so cheap to put it on different things. There's so many tokens running around. Obviously, the token it makes itself is case in point, but so many of these decks want to have that ability to kind of just amp up their attackers a little bit, and this does such a great job of that.
Vanish from Sight coming in at number 4. This is the instant that's 3 and a blue. Target non-land permanent's owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library, and you get to surveil 1. How do you like this card?
Yeah, another great card. I think we've seen versions of this spell. Blue often has a version of this spell, sort of like the top or bottom. And this one being both instant, being able to target any permanent, and coming along with the surveil 1, like when in a set that really cares about what might end up in the graveyard, like a little card selection plus an ability to get something in the graveyard if you need to.
If only it made a Glimmer.
Well, yeah, then I think it would be. I mean,
we saw be number 2.
Yeah, well, no, I think it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it might be the best card because we saw that. I think it was like something about Drowned from one of the. I think it was either the werewolf or the vampire set. The names aren't coming to me right off the top of my head, but it was it made a 2/2 zombie, one of those zombies that if you attack with it, it sacrifices. And that card was very excellent.
You're right. Revenge of the Drowned, instant. Same thing, makes a 2/2 zombie with Decayed.
Yes, and I think a 1/1 enchantment would be better than the 2/2 Decayed zombie in this set. So I kind of think that would have been that might have been a problem. But yes, it would have been great.
All right, so we've only had white and blue cards so far, which is going a long way and disappointing as to why Azorius is number 1 as far as the 2 color pairs are concerned. Coming in at number 5, we've got our first red card, Scorching Dragonfire. 1 and a red for an instant, deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and then you get to exile it, which is very important.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much to say about this other than it's extremely efficient removal at instant speed that, like you said, doesn't put the thing in the graveyard.
You shall not be getting Delirium.
Exactly.
Turn Inside Out is number 6. Now this one, fascinating to me. Single red mana for an instant, target creature gets +3/+0. No toughness boost here because when it dies, you manifest dread.
Yeah, I just think for 1 red mana, this does so much, and there's so many of the decks that care about attacking just want to have there's so many different ways this card helps with, obviously if you're in red green and you manifest, it can help with the delirium that you might be wanting to get, and also whatever the creature that you were attacking with dying might also help with the delirium that you're trying to activate. And you could go down the line of any of the color pairs that want to get aggressive in any way, shape, or form. This just does so much for 1 red. I suppose
if you're like, I'm trading, but also I get another creature out of it and activate, like you mentioned, delirium, or you can use it flexibly if you just need to get in extra points of damage.
100%
on an attack.
Yeah.
All right, you sold me. This one is also interesting. Clockwork Percussionist is coming in at number 7. This is a single red mana for the 1/1 monkey toy artifact creature. 2 things there. Okay. Haste. When it dies, you exile the top card of your library and you can play it until the end of your next turn.
Yeah. I think similarly, this is just a card. It may not look that way on first glance, but I think this is just a card you want to play in almost any red deck, like maybe blue-red. Like it maybe doesn't do much for that strategy, but I think like if you're trying to...
Because normally you'd be like, oh, I'm only playing this in a hyper-aggressive red-white deck, but you don't think that's the case.
Well, I think if you like let's say black-red, for example, like, I mean, this is a great sacrifice outlet, or not outlet, you know what I'm saying? This is a great thing to sacrifice. And it's also a great aggressive creature. You're always going to be happy to draw this on turn, have this on turn 1. But if you don't have it on turn 1,
it's fine.
It really just replaces itself almost always. And there's so many ways. A lot of Red's cards have ways of kind of like triggering off of, smaller toughness creatures or letting smaller toughness creatures attach through. Obviously, case in point being the turn inside out that we just talked about. Like those two cards play so well together. Like you attack with this, and if you have turn inside out, this is dying. You're getting to manifest. You're also getting to exile the top card of your library. I mean, that's just a wonderful combination.
I love this next card. And it's just like so interesting to me that it's in our top 10 list. This is Unable to Scream, single blue mana, enchantment aura, enchant creature. The creature becomes a toy, artifact creature, base power and toughness 0/2. And then you can't turn it face up if it was manifested. I mean, sometimes this kind of card in a set is going to be a massive liability. You can be like, I'm giving them a blocker. Like, good job. What did I do? In this set, it's number 8 on our list. Why do you think that is?
I think kind of similar to the Trapped in the Screen. I think they've really just they've messed with the ways this type of removal works enough that this is finally like really not finally. There have been other times where this has been playable, but I think this might be the most playable, just like generically powerful. Part of that is just the set that it's in because of Eerie, because of Delirium. Like this enchantment type is itself like a real advantage in this set, I think, in many ways. But making it 0, there's so often these types of things make it like a 1/1, which is a huge difference. It can get involved in combat still. It can, double block things. Like it can you can still make the person who's played it life like kind of annoying. But this one, it eliminates all of the abilities, which is a huge thing because that's oftentimes one of the liabilities of these types of cards is like the thing is sitting on the battlefield with an activated ability that can still activate, and then all of a sudden it's like, what did I even do here? Yeah. So I think, those things all kind of add up to make this just a really more playable. And the last thing I'll mention is just the one blue mana. I mean, it's so cheap. Can't be any cheaper than that, and it unless you want to make a really, really problematic Magic card. That just goes a long way towards making this playable.
Number 9. This one I did call out last week as being one of the best cards in the set, and it ends up to be true. Glassworks and Shattered Yard. So this is a room. Glassworks is 2 and a red. When you unlock this door, it deals 4 damage to a creature. When you unlock Shattered Yard, it's 4 and a red. The beginning of your end step, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. I mean, what more do you want?
Yeah,
get real.
Just great. It's an enchantment. So many things care about unlocking rooms or having enchantments enter. It's just great.
And finally, at number 10, my personal favorite, Spineseeker Centipede, 2 and a green, 2/1. When it ETBs, you can go find a basic land card, put it in your hand, and then if you have Delirium, it gets +1/+2 and has Vigilance. Like, what? This card's great.
Yeah, it really is great. This is one of the best versions of this type of card for sure. The fact that it's a relevant body later on in the game, not that it's, you're not like, pumping your fist like when you draw this maybe on like turn 12 or whatever. But I think the fact that it becomes a 3/3 and has Vigilance, like that makes it into something that you don't feel so terrible about drawing it. And the 3 mana 2/1 draw, any land, any basic land from your deck, like that is already something that you'd be happy to play.
I see this card going solo, people.
Yeah, it's definitely should be being picked more for sure.
So those are our top 10s. Keep your eyes peeled. Hate that sentence. Why do I say it every time? For those cards when you draft. And Tyler, you want to point out some underrated commons as well from the set.
Yeah, that's something I always like to look at. Just again, you can use the data. The two we already talked about game in hand win rate, and that's a stat that we're using in this as well. But there's also average last seen at, which is going to be like sort of the average number of picks that into the draft where you're still going
We're
to see
still
this card.
coming around the table.
So I, it's always interesting to look at those cards. And I would say if you draft a fair amount, you get a sense of what these cards are anyway without the stats. But I think it's always interesting to look and see like, oh, does my experience match up writ large with what is happening in the format for these? And so, I'll just run through a few because we've talked about a number of these cards already. The three that I would mention, most, as just I really want to highlight are Vanish from Sight, which we talked about as the blue instant speed put on the top or bottom of the deck.
Pick 7.
Yeah, it's almost 7 picks in is the average, and its game in hand win rate is 58.4%, which is very good.
It's very good.
And so that's a card that is for sure going later than it ought to. And the next one I'll mention is Glimmerlight, which, as we said, we talked about that, is especially given that it fits in so many of the decks and there's such a little cost to putting it in your deck because of the colorless mana cost.
Right.
It is going 6. It's about 6.5 picks in that is the average last season.
Yeah, I see that coming like literally. I think I saw it this morning, and it was like 3 cards left in the deck.
Yeah, exactly. And really, it's very unlikely that that's ever correct for any given table because there just is always going to be someone
Somebody
or
wants this. They just don't know
people.
who they want.
Exactly. So if you see this Glimmerlight coming around and it all feels like it's relevant to your strategy, which it probably is, it's definitely worth picking that up. The last one I'll highlight is Clockwork. Of these sort of like just, I would say these are like generically powerful cards that are going to fit in a lot of the decks that are the colors of these cards. Clockwork Percussionist, which again we just talked about, that Hasty Monkey that exiles a top card of your library when it dies. That's averaging about 6 picks in, and it's 58% game in hand win rate. So again, that card is pick up that monkey. And then quickly, the 2 tricks that are really worth taking a look at. We talked about Turn Inside Out already. That is 6.5 picks in about, and 58% win rate. A lot of red decks are going to want this. Not every red deck, but a lot of red decks are going to want this. And it is just a card that's going criminally late right now. And Jump Scare, which is 1 white +2/+2 to a creature at instant speed. It gains flying and becomes a horror enchantment creature in addition to its other types. Lower win rate, 56%, but still respectable, and is going again similarly 6.5 picks in. That's definitely a card that is going to be useful in a lot of those aggressive decks that want it. One little interaction that I'll point out that I find fun about this is it's Ethereal Armor, which a card after both of our hearts, I think, on some level. Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is the 1 white aura enchantment that gives +1/+1 for each other enchantment that you control.
You have so many people.
Exactly, and it also gives the creature first strike. So in combat, if you have that on a creature and you play Jump Scare on another creature, that is going to make that creature an enchantment. It's going to give the creature wearing Ethereal Armor another +1/+1, which may not be something that someone's expecting. So there's just lots of fun interactions like that in this set. And then the last 2 cards I'll mention as being underrated are, these are not cards that you need to pick up early or be on the lookout for trying to pick up early.
Because they come so late.
Partially because they come so late, but they are both cards that you would be okay playing in the decks that want them. The first one is Impossible Inferno, which is 4 and a red instant. It deals 6 damage to target creature, and then if you have Delirium, if there are 4 or more cards types among your graveyard, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. A lot of the cards, this exile play until a certain time effect, they have continued to kind of like juice that a little bit, and now we're in this set, at least, we consistently are seeing it until the end of your next turn, which is a huge difference versus until the end of this turn, especially with a 4 and a red card. But this is oftentimes we see these like more expensive red removal spells being pretty unplayable in sets. But this is one that you definitely are not, again, you don't need to be trying to pick this early, but this is a card that you can feel good about putting in your deck. And then the other card I'll mention is Vicious Clown, which is 2 and a red creature, human clown. Whenever another
that's what I am.
I mean, as are we all in our own ways. Whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, Vicious Clown gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it's a 2/3. This is going about averaging about 7 picks in, so like very late in.
Play this with the Gremlin Maker, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, yes. I mean that, and just the amount of ways. I mean, jump scare is a great example of like if you play like a creature that makes another creature, and then you jump scare this, like it's like a lot. It's like 8 damage or more. So you're.
I've been clowned on, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Same. And so yeah, both of those cards. Again, not needing to spend early picks on them, but they are both cards that you could be happy to put in your deck.
Can I offer one? You can tell me if I'm right about this or not. I'm going to throw up Friendly Ghost.
Friendly Ghost. Yeah, I would say it's not like heavily underrated, but definitely somewhat underrated. And it's not a card underrated. Friendly Ghost and Most Valuable Slayer are 2 cards that don't have like amazing stats for how I feel like the cards feel to play against. Like Most Valuable Slayer is the 4 mana 2/4 that when you attack, it gives +1/+0 and first strike to a creature, to any creature.
It doesn't have to attack.
Yeah, on the turn it comes down and that happens. Those cards both have felt at times like, oppressive. And sorry to mention what the Friendly Ghost does. It's a 4 mana 2/4 flyer. It's 3 and a white, and it gives any creature +2/+4 when it enters. So it just makes any creature able to attack probably pretty profitably.
Yes.
And yes, both of those cards I think are good. They have, for whatever reason, at this point, the stats they're both in the 55-ish% win rate. So I wouldn't have put them on this list.
Well, mark my words.
But I will say that
Casper's going to climb up these rankings.
Yeah. And given it also, it's worth mentioning that the Friendly Ghost, a 2/4 flyer, is one of those stat lines that sometimes feels a little underwhelming, but there's so many cards in white and red that care about the 2 or less power that like in some cases it can even be an advantage that it's a little bit understated.
That's a great point.
Even without that ETB, which is really or enter, I should say, that is really.
I know. I
really
always say ETB. Yeah. It took me a long time to come around to mana value. I'm still not entirely there either.
Yeah, same.
Well, thank you, Tyler, for walking us through all of this data on 17 lands and just your experience playing Duskmourn generally. When you're sitting down to draft, what are you most hoping that you're going to make? If all the stars align.
Man, that's a great question. I feel like what I would love to play, I feel like the Rakdos Sacrifice deck is a deck I would love to play. I can't remember the name of the Signpost Uncommon in that, the enchantment. But
showing my brain, that's what I call that card.
Showing my brain, that's a good enough name for it. It certainly is what is happening on the art. But that card is certainly single-handedly one of the reasons to be in the color pair. And if you can pick up a couple of those, I know that it's when it ETBs or enters. God bless. When it enters, you can sacrifice an enchantment or a creature, and if you do, you draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
And then if it gets sacrificed, you manifest dread. That card is just so much value all wrapped up into one that it's got. I can't remember the exact game in hand win rate, but it's in the 60s. It's like 60 or 61. Disturbing Mirth. Oh, that's pretty close to show my brain.
Yeah.
And that card is a reason to be in Rakdos, and it feels like one of those cards that's just really fun to play with. There's so many little like decisions I feel like that you get to make with that, and it's like, do I sacrifice a creature? Do I have like to get those 2 cards? Like all of those decisions feel like they're really rewarding. So I haven't gotten a chance to play that yet, but that's certainly a color pair that I would love to play.
All right, nice. Well, everybody out there, let us know what you think of the format. Head to our Discord if you're a Patreon patron, or let us know in the YouTube comments, because I'm very curious to know how you're all finding the format. But I, for one, am extremely happy with how Duskmourn has played out so far. Really excited to see where it goes as it matures as a format. But so far, all of the data is pointing to the fact that we might have a great format on our hands.
Yes.
Which is pretty excellent. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us here on another episode of Good Luck High Five. Thank you so much to Tyler Mills for coming on, being our special guest and playing the role of Megan this episode.
As I said, there's no way that I can possibly do the role justice, but I was happy to have given the opportunity to attempt that.
And Tyler and I, this is not our first time on Good Luck High Five being on a podcast togetger.
That's true.
We also did Break the Dice, the improvised campaign, which you can find in any of your podcast feeds to hear us playing some, I'm going to use playing some D&D. I'll put that in very big quotes.
It's D&D adjacent, for sure.
D&D adjacent podcast. Break the Dice. Check it out. It's very funny, and it is not rated PG as Good Luck High Five is. So if that's an incentive or a drawback, whatever. that means to you.
But it should be stated.
Yes, but it's a very fun, great time. And Tyler and I had a season of playing 2 adventurers together on a quest, which was just a delight. One of the highlights of my podcasting life for sure.
Same.
And and very excited to have you here as part of the Good Luck High Five family moving forward, seeing you on Commander Arcade and helping us out behind the scenes with editing and social media and all of that. So we're very excited to have you as part of the team.
Well, I couldn't be more excited to be here for sure.
Thank you once again to everyone who makes the show happen over on Patreon. All of our patrons, patreon.com/GLHF Magic. Make Megan make a pun when her brain is addled next week, or totally fine, as the case may be.
Whichever.
Thank you to Card Kingdom. You can check them out at cardkingdom.com/GLHF. And of course, Dragon Shield, the best sleeves in the game. Use the affiliate link to buy whatever you like and use the code GLHF at checkout for 5% off. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you back here next week for more horrifying news from Duskmourn. And maybe Commander.